Okay, this is a Capital Program Oversight Committee meeting. Right now, Don, we have some public speakers?
Yeah, two public speakers.
Two.
The first is Jason Panero.
Excuse me, can we turn his microphone on, please?
All right. Thanks, Joe, for the reminder. A couple of things. One, I'm delighted that the boards in Grand Central Terminal will be updated. This is way overdue. I'm delighted that we're going to report on the M9 for the commuter rails, but no update has been provided regarding the R179s and the R211s. We're waiting on the report regarding that. But a certain board member called me out earlier doing a comment doing finance. Peter Ward, I thought that you was an ally of a writers, but that comment was kind of out of touch, because I bring ideas to the table, not Murray Bowden. He doesn't bring ideas to the table, and I want the subway service that I take every day to be better every single day. And I always count on Joe on that, despite that at the beginning we began on a rocky side. But Joe, I bet that you're gonna put the MTA in a good state of repair, and I believe that. So I'm waiting on the report regarding the Second Avenue subway and everything else. That's all I have to say.
In the earlier meeting, the gentleman made some comments about the prior speaker that I think most of us on the board here agree are inappropriate. I find it's inappropriate that some of this name calling out people on the board from the podium over there in a disrespectful manner is also very inappropriate. Now, I have a very busy schedule. I'm here trying to do the best I can to manage my job, my personal affairs, and being a member of this board, an unpaid member of this board, I might add. And I think every one of us is entitled to a certain amount of deference and respect as we sit here and try to deal with and grapple with difficult issues. People who make comments are also entitled to the same thing. Mm-hmm. There shouldn't be any name calling because somebody from the public wants to express an opinion. And finally, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I don't have the time to listen to somebody who wants to, every single time they come up there, speak for more than the 2 minutes that are allotted to them. Now, I understand that there may be times when somebody should get a few more minutes for very special circumstances. But when we have a time allotment of 2 minutes, it seems that we should adhere to that. And I would ask that at some point we bring some kind of order to this process. Because I don't know how the rest of the board members feel. I know how a few feel. This is becoming a problem.
Right,
and it seems to be getting worse, and it seems to be deteriorating since I've been here.
Peter, I agree with you. It's considerably worse from when I was last here 5 years ago. So we will enforce the 2-minute rule. It's something that I've really asked that we do. So we have one more speaker who will be limited to 2 minutes. I will also request of staff to put together rules regarding what can be said and certain levels of decorum, with an understanding that if they violate that, they will be cut off and will go on to the next speaker. I think we can easily put that together, hopefully even in time for Wednesday's full board meeting. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Murray Bowden.
I'm dyslexic, and I have trouble with names and remembering names, so I use first names a lot. At this morning's bus meeting, Darrell spoke about the traffic light synchronization that is coming. And I contrast that with what you spoke at the last meeting here about the fare schedules and how you were going to do that. And that goes back to positive train control, which was a system that was developed over 10 years ago and is no longer valid. And you're going to discuss that today. How can you possibly discuss a system as outdated as that after listening to your discussion of the fare system? Technology has changed incredibly. My car stops by itself when it sees a car in front of me, and yet you keep running trains into the end of the railroad stations. To stop positive train control is an enormous undertaking. And the amount of money that's involved is beyond comprehension. And it will never, ever cover every single track. Whereas what Darrell described this morning was we decided that we're going to, on this street, control the traffic lights so when the bus comes there, we get priority. That kind of technology is easily applied to the railroads. But you have a mandate. Positive train control. You're required. Well, at some point, somebody has to say that technology is outdated, and we need to stop spending money on an outdated technology, because at the last meeting here, you proved it yourselves. We're going to have many different ways of determining how we pay for the railroad. I just came
Just
back.
please wrap up, Mr. Bowden.
Yes, I was in Paris yesterday using the public transportation with their systems, which are different. But your problem of stopping positive train control is enormous, and it is required to save that money. Thank you.
No further? No further. Okay. Approval of the minutes from our meeting on September 25th. Do we have a motion? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We'd like to go a little bit out of order so that we can do this on an expedited basis. First, go to Jenna Lieber for an update on East Side Access. Then we're going to immediately after that go to the update on PTC, and then go back into the rest of the presentation. So, Jano?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman. In the 4 months since I arrived here, I've spent a lot of time looking at the East Side Access project, trying to figure out where it is, where it's going, and I want to use about 15 minutes of the board, the committee's time today to brief you using that agenda, which is what is East Side Access, what does the project mean for the city, Long Island, and the region, to give you an update of where the project stands, what's left to do, and most important, the challenges this project faces and what I view as some key solutions. Okay. East Side Access is MTA's largest capital project. In fact, it's the largest federally funded transportation infrastructure project in the United States. Together with Long Island Railroad's third track, East Side Access is the first significant expansion of the Long Island Railroad in over 100 years. We're finally making investments in a system that was built when Long Island had 37,000 people, when today it has almost 3 million. Let me remind you what the project includes: 8 miles of tunneling, 25 miles of new tracks, a brand new 350,000 square foot concourse beneath Grand Central that is approximately 8 city blocks long, making it the greatest expansion in that great terminal in its 104-year history. And third, not to be forgotten, modernizing and fortifying the Harold Interlocking, the busiest railroad interlocking in North America, where there are almost 800 train movements a day, and which is utilized by 3 of the largest passenger rail carriers in the country. So what does the project mean for the city, Long Island, and the region? It means faster commutes, direct access to Grand Central, fewer delays, and less crowding. Specifically, the project is going to provide Long Island Railroad customers on all 11 lines direct access to Grand Central, saving those commuters up to 40 minutes per day, which adds up to roughly 10 full days a year for family, for work, and for other activities. 50% of today's Penn Station-bound Long Island Railroad ridership is expected to use the new Grand Central facility, which is going to reduce overcrowding in Penn and on the surrounding subway lines. The time savings that I've just mentioned have real economic benefits. Government metrics peg the value of those time savings at roughly $300 million a year. And faster commutes mean real opportunities for working families on Long Island to access high-paying jobs in Manhattan. And last, not to be forgotten also, the East Side Access will create redundancy, which, as we've learned from natural and human events in the past decade, is something we desperately need. Economic development. East Side Access lets Long Islanders take full advantage of the much talked about East Midtown rezoning. Everyone who sees that 2 million square foot office building going up just adjacent to Grand Central knows how quickly that is taking effect. And that means job opportunities. Better jobs also means more spending at home in Long Island, and that's why we have the Northport retail district viewed on the right. And it also means property values. According to a 2015 report, the value of East Side Access to property values on Long Island for 587,000 homes impacted in Queens and in Long Island amounts to roughly $4.7 billion. Regional connectivity. Let me show you a video about that in just a moment. We all hear in the transportation industry about the need to move towards regional connectivity, breaking down historic barriers between our various operations. And East Side Access, because of the connectivity it provides, really is a major, major move in that direction, opening connections between Westchester and Long Island, and ultimately giving you the opportunity as well in the future to move towards New Jersey. It also allows us to capture the full benefits of the very significant third and double track projects in Long Island, significantly increasing capacity and service on the Long Island Main Line and key branches, and not to be overlooked, reverse commuting, which is extremely limited in today's conditions, is made possible with the capacity and reliability focus that East Side Access will provide. And as I mentioned at last month's Railroad Committee meeting, East Side Access is a massive investment in the state of good repair. We've seen again and again, most recently with Amtrak last summer, the state of good repair matters, and we have to get ahead of these infrastructure crises. And East Side Access really is allowing us to invest very significantly in the long-term viability of our entire regional railroad infrastructure, and I'll talk about some of that in a moment. The project status, it is 73% complete. And I'm going to talk first about the progress in the Herald interlocking, which is a key element, as I said, for the whole regional railroad system. I'm going to show you an animation. As I said, the 100-year-old Herald interlocking is the busiest passenger rail interlocking in North America. I'm going to show you an animation of how Herald works now and how it's going to be improved by East Side Access. Here's a representation of the train tracks to Herald today during the morning rush. The red is Long Island and blue is Amtrak. You can see how the trains occasionally interfere with themselves and are forced to stop to wait their turn. Similarly, there's outbound problems in the evening. All that stopping now in the post-East Side Access configuration. Note the increased number of track switches and overall routes, and as you can see, the trains are traversing without those types of delays. That was a little fast for me to get all my words out, but that's the truth. And we're building all of this while, and I'm going to talk a little about the substance of it, but we're building all of this while the existing train operations to Penn Station continue. So you're operating in a fully in the busiest passenger rail environment and trying to get work done in the middle of that. With 780 train movements a day, as I said, we have to perform work around train schedules, sometimes in a 30 to 45-minute window, to complete significant and challenging activities. And it's no secret to this board that some of that work has been challenged by the operational needs of Amtrak in particular, sometimes Long Island as well, and the constraints on outages. We've made significant progress on the outage front, getting certainty about this project's ability to get outages, but we are proud that we've only delayed 7 trains during the entire duration of this project as a result of our East Side Access work. Quick bar chart that conveys the significance of some of the components of the Herald work. I'm not going to go through all of it, but it includes, for example, 10 miles of new track, 5 railroad bridges, more than a mile of new retaining walls, 15 signal huts, which are part of this incredibly new modernized signal system. And all of this is delivering benefits to riders already. This is an important point that I'm not sure is widely understood, that as we get this work done in Herald, it is improving reliability and durability of our regional rail system today, and is not, in fact, waiting for the opening of the concourse, which is obviously what we are all shooting towards. Specifically, we've begun pre-cutover testing of the final 5 central instrument locations. In total, there are going to be 10. And the testing is going to continue through March 2018. And in May of next year, the new CILs will be put into service. Once the cutover is complete, we can finish the relocation, removal, and replacement of tracks and switches in the eastern end of the interlocking over next summer. This critical timeline will allow for the on-time start of work on the remaining tunnel approach, which is going to bring our final tunnel to the surface. And all of this is pretty technical sounding, but it's hugely important to deliver that capacity. The concourse itself on the Manhattan side, 350,000 square feet, I think 8 city blocks long, a contemporary version of what we know as Grand Central with modern amenities. And it has as you can see over the length of that concourse, you can enter at different points, which is going to allow people both to get to and from work more quickly and ideally on their return to be able to locate the right spot on the train where they want to be for the most efficiency, really benefiting from time savings so they can navigate their way to and from the train ideally. I'm going to show you a video of what's going on in the terminal now. The 11, as I said, almost 1,200-foot long terminal caverns, which are 15 stories below Park Avenue, accommodate 8 trains at a time. There are going to be 22 escalators flanked by digital media platforms to provide all the information and advertising, which is part of the economics of this institution. Public areas are going to have cellular and Wi-Fi fully. The finishes, as you see, are reminiscent of the rest of Grand Central, and the retail plan includes 25 separate stories plus opportunities for what folks call pop-up. We all used to call kiosks, but now more elegantly it's called pop-up locations for different retail as retail demands evolve. The concourse looking north-south there is 41% complete. Half of the escalators, 11 out of 22, have been done. And that's in the caverns, I think, as I mentioned, we excavated 6 miles of tunnels, and in effect, that's like lying, 1,200 feet long. It's like lying the Chrysler building on its side underground. And it was all done, obviously, without any visible impact to commuters upstairs on the street. That's a huge benefit of this project, is that we have not damaged the activities of our central business district. In Queens, we have 4 tunnels that amounted to 2 miles of excavation, and in those same recently bored and lined tunnels, we have begun installing track in recent weeks. What's left to do? It's a huge project. The last, as I said, it's 73% done, but the last 25% is really the most challenging. We've got to fit out the concourse in the terminal in Manhattan. We've got to install all the tracks, the traction power, and the signals in Queens and Manhattan. You've heard about some of that. We have to do the Long Island Railroad's midday storage yard in Queens and a section of the adjacent to Harold interlocking. And we have to finish connecting and bringing to the surface those 2 remaining tunnels from Manhattan. And most important, and this is a point I want to underscore, we have to undertake and successfully complete all of the systems installation and testing. In the interest of time, I'm not going to talk about all the milestones. We have significant milestones that are going to be achieved in the next year, including completion of the precast that's in the caverns. The caverns will start to feel like the truly finished places they are, and all of the systems work that I just alluded to is all coming in the next starting in the next few months. Challenges. Most important part of this presentation. I have undertaken an independent review of the project, and I'm here to tell you that since there was a rebaselining of the project and a reorganization in 2014, there has been significant progress made. But that said, the project has not been fully successful in resolving all the challenges that this project and any project of this scale may face. Specifically, we have the program, we have it across the agency that there is a certain silo, quality of silo organization that exists. And we really need to, and this is partly a vestige of the way that this project was originally conceived when we broke it up into many different contracts for all kinds of reasons many years ago. The result is that those different contracts, those different programs run into each other, and we need to reorganize and redirect this project so that they are truly working in a dovetail way, in a streamlined way, and in tandem with each other so that there's much, much more coordination. Second, the IEC. Our internal experts have raised concerns about systems testing, where we are. This CPOC has heard something about it, and I'm here to tell you that they are right. Our current management model is focused on bulk construction, the major civil construction that I've showed to you. That may have been right for the time in the project that we have now completed, but now we need to move to a much more intense focus on systems testing, which is where things can go wrong. Third, our change order process is unacceptably slow and cumbersome. The average change order now takes 8 months to process. I'm embarrassed to tell you that, but that's the truth, and that's unacceptable. Now, it's not because people just sit around and don't do anything. It's because we have too much process and too little opportunity for facing whatever a change order involves squarely, discussing it, and coming to a decision. There's too many different layers of review, and it's all done on paper. When I arrived, I started to see these piles of red folders coming to my desk, and I wouldn't sign any of them until I said, who's the person who's responsible for this work? They have to explain it, they have to justify it. I'm not interested in reading all this stuff, which is months and months old. So we have to fix that. And finally, our project managers, this is our consulting staff, are not sufficiently empowered to actually manage the job in an aggressive way. We have to, we hire all these consultants to run the project for us. We have to make them part of our team. We have to empower them. We have to give them responsibility, and we have to manage them with accountability, and that's a challenge. Systems testing, well, I botched that. That was that last one. But here's systems testing. There are 29 separate systems that need to be integrated before we can actually launch the service into and out of Grand Central. Those are systems that affect safety through 7 interlockings in and out of Grand Central. It means that those are the systems that support a safe and comfortable station environment, the control and monitoring of access and security, radio, telephone, public address, tunnel ventilation, system-wide electrical power, and you see how interconnected they all are. They're managed out of 4 separate control centers connected by a complex network communication system. So we have got to really get in control of this, and part of this is that we are recommending, and I'll talk about it in a moment, that we start systems testing now rather than waiting for all of these different contracts to get finished, complete their systems, and then we'll see how it all works together. I think our approach is we got to start testing systems now, even if it's on an incremental and partial basis. So to that end, I have 6 significant changes that I want to make right away. with the leadership's blessing, hopefully. One, we're going to move from bulk construction, as I said, to finishes and systems. Two, we're going to need a different approach to schedule. Right now, our schedules tend to be retrospective. All the different contracts report on what they got done, and then we roll it all up. What we really need is a schedule that we can use to drive prioritization of work, and that is a different kind of schedule, and we need to move towards that. Third, I'm going to create what I would call a project management organization team, which is sort of a centralized SWAT team that has the power to prioritize work and remove roadblocks. That's the only way to get all of these different contracts aligned and prioritized properly. Fourth, as I said, we're underutilizing our CMs, what we call the construction management team, our consultants, and they need to be empowered, they need to be held accountable, and part of that is they need to be held accountable for change orders and given the opportunity to justify them or get shot down if they can't. Timely. Fifth, we need to reform the change order process. I think I've talked enough about this. We need to alter how we get them done, eliminate the bureaucracy, eliminate the layering, and have a committee which actually faces the change orders timely. Part of the duration is that we don't of all these change orders, we're not prioritizing them. Some of these change orders require redesign. So we have got to decide which ones are important, which ones are justified, and then really push them through the redesign process so that they don't end up holding things up. Sixth is something I've talked to Pat Nowakowski and his team a lot about, is we need more effective integration of the ESA team with the Long Island Railroad people. They have to review submittals, they have to make engineering decisions. They are the customer. The public is the ultimate customer, but the Long Island Railroad is the first level customer for this project. We need to get them much more involved and under the hood and participating in over-the-shoulder reviews rather than sending things to liaisons who then send them to Jamaica, where it is one of many things that an engineer in Jamaica who's got 20 other responsibilities is addressing. We need people inside the East Side Access Organization much more intensely, especially as we plan for them to take over and operate a brand new terminal that is as big as any terminal that's been provided in this region in many, many moons. I haven't checked the durations, but an 8-track brand new terminal that's going to, carry 100,000 passengers. We really need Long Island to grab it, to make it their own, and to be in charge of testing and commissioning and figuring out how to run this. And Pat and I are figuring out how to make that much more a part of our process. That is it's a status report. It doesn't answer every question that this project raises, and I will continue to report back to this committee and to the chair and our leadership, but I wanted to provide you that status report right away.
Any questions for Jano? Yes, Andrew?
This is maybe for Pat as well, but I don't want you to think that this is anti-East Side Access, because I'm very pro-East Side Access.
Uh-oh.
But I think the success of this project verges on a lot of things, and perhaps Pat's team has thought about some of them. If in fact 50% of the population wants to go from Long Island to East Midtown, as you indicated earlier, has any thought been given to service plans from the various branches and how long somebody might have to wait for a Grand Central train versus a Penn Station train, and whether they'll actually wait that time and ride the train to Grand Central, or will they continue to go to Penn and make their way to East Midtown? That's one issue, and I don't know how it's broken down per branch, but I would think that you would want to know that.
It's a good question. I really have to look to Pat to answer. That was not among the issues I've managed to get up to speed on.
And one of the other things is the Jamaica reconfiguration plan, which envisions shuttle service to Brooklyn. If somebody has a seat, are they likely to want to change at Jamaica and change again at Brooklyn to get to a lower Manhattan destination, or are they likely to stay on their train to Penn or Grand Central and then take an East or West Side subway? Much more likely, in my way of thinking, and that means those subway lines might get more crowded. So these are issues that I think,
Andrew, the questions you're asking are all obviously operational type questions. Sure. Okay. When this project was put together and going through the environmental process many years ago, a lot of these items were addressed. Are plans developed? Yes.
ridership changes, things change. We certainly need to stay on top of this as we go forward. You and and Ira and I have discussed the whole Brooklyn connection thing, but that was a decision that was made as part of moving this project forward, but it does not preclude other options being developed.
Thank you.
Right. Yes, Neil?
Thank you, sir. I'll take it from the operational all the way back to the top level question, which is, A, does your assessment change the revenue service date at all that we have to be aware of? And 2, does the independent engineer have a viewpoint about your recommendations?
Yeah, the independent engineer, I'm sure, will make a comment after the questions, but if we want to do it now, we can also do it now.
The revenues, at this time, we are very much driving towards the revenue service date of December 22. But I'm, digging in on this, and I'm going to be very transparent with all of you about what I'm finding or not. So that right now, that is very much part of the focus and why, part of the rationale for these recommendations.
Are there any further questions? Yes, Susan?
Pat, I'm assuming that you will be doing a ridership evaluation that's based on present data, because we're going to need that information in order to determine service.
Yeah, we just undertook an origination and destination study, so yes, we are doing that.
Yeah, there will be evaluations done over time in evaluating, how many people now go into Penn Station who actually work near Grand Central, so they don't have to. There's all kinds of permutations.
And I'd also like to say to Jano that some of the items that you've identified as needing improvement are CPOC-wide and should be taken to other projects, maybe other parts of the organization.
Integrating the organization is a high priority of mine, and this goes to the core of it. Thank you. Any further questions? The IEC have
Yes,
report?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr.
Joe
Chairman and
DeVito.
members of the board, as you just heard, MTACC is working swiftly on redirecting their efforts in order to improve the East Side Access project outcome. The IEC is encouraged by MTACC's initiative to implement these strategies to deal with upcoming challenges in program delivery, change management, and other areas, many of which the IEC has cited previously. That said, the IEC continues to remain concerned about such risks as overall project cost, delayed to CIL cutovers and potential impact to subsequent Harold work, delays to systems work, which in our view has consumed some of the program contingency at this point, and which have all been reported to CPOC by the IEC. The IEC anticipates that future project reports will contain data on cost and schedule status, at which time the IEC will be able to provide the board with an updated evaluation. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Ms. Kelly.
Following up on your report and Jano's report, which we very much appreciate, and it's much better to get that in October of 2017 than it would be in October of 2018 or 2019 or 2020 in that context. But recent reports relating to the additional work that Amtrak has to do at Penn Station, especially as it relates to the East River tunnels, and their decision now to delay that work until East Side Access is implemented, and their ability to move or not move East Side Access because of the work they need to do for you and the cooperation they need to provide you at Harold, could almost puts them in a point of where they can provide the end result date rather than us, which disturbs me no end. So I was wondering if you could quickly describe your conversations with Amtrak on those two issues and how they could or could not have an effect on the scheduled completion date.
Commissioner, I think a couple of months ago, you raised the most fundamental issue we have with Amtrak, which is how are outages distributed, and can we count on getting outages when we request them and when they're promised? There has been progress on that front. Our team at ESA actually took the lead in developing what they call there's an integrated outage schedule, which is done on a 3-month, 1-year, and even in the process of development, a 10-year basis. And there is cooperation from all of the operators, Long Island, Eastside Access, Moynihan, and so on. It even includes some of the outages that are required, for example, for the related work in Hudson Yards, which Long Island has worked so hard to make sure got done. So there is significant progress on the transparency and the collaborativeness of outages. That said, that will continue to be a challenge, and Amtrak at the end of the day does have the power to remove or cancel outages. There's been less of that recently, but they do have that power, and we're all working together to make sure there's a lot less of that going forward. The other principal variable is their ability, as you said, to staff and support outage work in Harold and elsewhere with force account labor and the different trades that they need to do. And that is also a work in progress. I don't think it's quite as advanced as the outage, the regional master schedule for outages, but we are working on it with Amtrak, and they have been cooperative as well. So that is a work in progress. As for the East River Tunnel, look, it is not unreasonable that they should say that it will be easier in terms of impact on the public if Eastside Access is completed before the East River tunnels are taken out of service. That is factual. I'm not sure that they did it strictly out of courtesy to us, because their design work has a few years to get completed. But even as it is, it does make rational sense for us to get done with Eastside Access, as that will deliver additional capacity for the scenario where the East River tunnels are taken out by Amtrak.
Just hope that cooperation would continue, because obviously we would not want them to be able to delay the opening of Eastside Access because their work for the East River tunnels was not ready. So to some degree, they have control over both aspects of this, which is the concern I have. And I'm hopeful that your continued work with them and the chairman's continued work with them in this endeavor will be beneficial from our customers.
And I can't help it, but I need to say thanks to Long Island Railroad, which has really worked very hard to make sure that we started to squeeze down the number of Amtrak cancellations. They have really worked their tails off with Amtrak, and we have done great teamwork on that.
If we can now move on to the Long Island Railroad Metro North update regarding positive train control. Debbie? Thanks, Jenna.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know you all probably have a lot of questions for PTC, so I do have a lot of information to convey to you today, and if you could reserve your questions to the end, if at all possible, that would be much appreciated. Hopefully, I'll answer your questions as I go through the presentation. Where's our presentation? I'll start. The project is currently on schedule to be in FRA compliance at the end of 2018. And I'll give you a little bit more information about what I mean when I say FRA compliance later and throughout the presentation. The current budget is still $968 million. We last reported to the board in June, and at that time I had told everyone that the period from June to September this year was critical. And when I came back in October, I'd have a better understanding of the project progress, especially in regards to the final design review milestone, the status of our factory acceptance testing, and software development progress. Although the project team has been really working very hard with the contractor, we unfortunately realized 3 project risks, which I'll talk a little bit about. The first risk, the completion of final design review, which was initially expected to be complete in August, has been delayed and is still now targeted for the end of the year. With over 600 documents to review and to submit and have all the details fully submitted, that work is still in progress. It's not to say that the design work that we've done to date is for naught. I mean, we have a lot of the design work done. We're getting now into the details of the interfaces and the integration issues that occur between the various subsystems. The second risk, the completion of the site acceptance test plans and procedures, has also been delayed, and the new target is also at the end of the year. Part of that is the refocus of the project team to concentrate on the testing of the office system and also the factory acceptance testing. So unfortunately, that had an impact on the development of the site testing plans and procedures. The last risk, which is the commissioning of the Port Jervis line, which was a topic of discussion earlier today, there's been a delay in the cutover for the cab signaling system on the Port Jervis line, and the cutover was planned in September. Unfortunately, due to some software issues, that cutover has been delayed and may have an impact to commissioning the PTC on that line. As part of the mitigation strategy to try to recover the schedule and keep the project to meet to meet compliance at the end of 2018, the contractor and the railroads have worked pretty closely together over the last few weeks to try to establish a new implementation plan. This new approach will collapse the software development process. Initially, we had tried to implement the software in phases. Unfortunately, we found that there was a lot of overhead involved in that process, which required a lot of administrative work to try to release the software through multiple iterations. And we found that it's probably in our best interest to give the developers more time to do their development and release the final software in one stage. That also, that strategy is also in line with meeting the compliance at the end of 2018 in order to get all of the full functionality of PTC ready for revenue service demonstration at the end of the year. As part of this new approach, the software, like I had said, the software developers have more time to develop the full functionality. No longer are we concentrating just on the core, but also the other functionality involving interoperability, security, and also roadway worker protection system, which was an option that was exercised by Long Island Railroad. The new approach also gives more time for the field guys to develop their test plans and procedures. It streamlines the testing durations for the non-pilot lines based on new feedback from the FRA, which I'll describe a little bit more later. It assumes the start of formal pilot testing with a pre-vet version of the system integrated software. And it also focuses on getting all of our lines in revenue service demonstration, followed by FRA certification. Next slide. I don't know if we have the slide. So as stated at the beginning of the presentation, both railroads are on schedule for FRA compliance at the end of 2018. And, oh, okay. That's the, one slide back, please. The FRA compliance slide. In late 2015, Congress extended the PTC deadline to 2018. And as part of that new law, it defined what it meant to be in FRA compliance. So what that means is all of the railroads must have all of their hardware installed by the end of 2018. And that means all of the wayside hardware has to be installed, all the onboard equipment on enough of the fleet to cover service must be installed, and all the back office dispatch, and communication systems must also be installed to support testing. Both railroads expect to have all of their installations complete by the end of 2018. The railroads also must have acquired all of their spectrum, which both railroads have right now. The railroads must also have their training programs complete and have trained enough of their staff to support revenue service demonstration on the pilot lines, and we expect to have that done by the end of 2018 as well. And finally, the railroads must have their pilot lines in revenue service demonstration. Now, this is going to be the most challenging criteria to meet, but we're still confident that we're going to we'll have the software ready to actually demonstrate the full PTC functionality on our pilot lines by the end of 2018. As part of the new law, if all of these criteria are met, the railroads have, and they're in compliance, the railroads have the opportunity to request an alternate schedule in order to test and fully commission their entire network with PTC operations. So at this point in time, the railroads are about 54%. Oh, I would. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're approximately 54% complete. During this reporting period, the railroads progressed wayside and onboard installations. I'll provide more details on the next slide. We progressed the completion of final design, and as noted earlier, we're somewhat delayed and still targeting for the completion at the end of this year. The railroads continued the development of software for various elements of the system, and pending the completion of this testing, the subsystem FATs, which were originally planned also to be complete in the last reporting period, those activities are still in progress. The test team has been pretty busy over the last few months. July and August has been pretty busy for us. We actually conducted the onboard factory acceptance testing for our onboard computer, and with the exception of remote diagnostics. But what this does, this software actually allows us to start preliminary field testing with interfaces between the train and the wayside. We conducted a factory acceptance test for the communication manager, a key element of the system, which basically provides the communication between the base and the mobile package that's on the train. We conducted the software FAT for the office, and we also conducted a transponder FAT, factory acceptance test, for the pilot lines. These FATs, although we conducted the factory acceptance test, we still need to do a little bit more work to make sure that it's working as designed, and the test teams will be still working hard to get that work done. The railroads continue to finalize interoperability design with Amtrak. Interoperability is a key element of making sure that the system fully functions. We've been meeting with Amtrak weekly to finalize the physical interfaces for our communication networks and our safety servers. We continued preliminary field testing of the communications interface between the train and the wayside and office elements. And we are still developing our training program, continuing to train people as we develop those programs. We equipped enough vehicles on our system to support pilot testing. And lastly, when we met last time, we had talked about doing an audit on the contractor's internal safety review process. And no significant findings were made, but we're still looking at the artifacts that were provided by the contractor, and we'll schedule follow-up sessions to ensure that those documents support the submission of our systems, our safety plans. Thanks. Thank you.
Debbie, if I could, Commissioner Zuckerman has to leave due to a
Okay.
prior engagement. If he given an opportunity to ask a question, and then you can proceed.
It's very kind of you, Mr. Chair. I apologize because I don't really have a question. I have to make a statement, though. as many in this board have heard me say for a long time, I joined this board about 6 months after one of my neighbors passed away in Spite and Duyvil. His wife is a councilwoman in our town, and I carry Jim Lovell's name and face when I'm here almost every day. I am severely disappointed in the progress of where we are with PTC. I am disappointed that in the code I'm hearing December 2018 is not in operation. It is we have components in place that will keep us in compliance. If that's the case, that is even more disappointing, because I know the riding public does not care that we're in FRA compliance. They care that we actually have a system that works, that helps prevent accidents. This governor has proven over and over again that he can get things done. Second Avenue subway, open road tolling, Wi-Fi in stations, Moynihan Station. It is incredible what this governor has helped get done in this system with your help as members of this team. I implore us to figure out how we can get this done by moving mountains and getting things operational like the way we've been talking about for some time. We don't owe this just to ourselves or the FRA or some rules and regulations. We owe it to the riding public, because despite commentary that we've heard, and there may be some validation to it or validity to it, that maybe this is not the best technology or the most current technology, it is what we are doing, it is the path we're down, and it is essential to the safety of the riding public, which I consider the #1 role we all have as a board. So I'm sorry, sir, there's not a question per se, but there is, I guess, disappointment and deep concern on this one board member's behalf about where we stand.
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate it. I share your point of view as well.
Can I just make one statement? The statutory criteria for FRA compliance requires the pilot lines to go into revenue service demonstration, which in essence means that we do have to demonstrate full PTC functionality at that time. So what we've done is created a schedule to make sure that that work actually gets accomplished in the timeline that we have. The risk to completion is on the development, the progress of the software. And you're right, it is challenging. There's still a lot of technical challenge that we have to meet, but we're pretty confident that we're going to make it.
Let me ask a very binary question. Under the current plan, by December 31st, 2018, and I'll leave west of Hudson aside for a second because I think that's a more fraught issue, will we have, for all three lines in the Hudson, New Haven, and Harlem, will all three have PTC implemented?
We'll be in compliance with the 2018 by then.
Sir, I'm not looking for a legalistic answer. I'm looking for, that's the question I'm asking.
What's the pilot?
Okay, thank you.
So we were down at FRA, I guess, the week before last, and they asked those types of questions. And I will tell you what we told them. We're going to try like hell to have it in by December of 2018. But Debbie has outlined the risks. The risks are significant. They are significant. But we are going to do our level best to try to have it fully implemented by 2018. We will be back in front of you in a few months. I think January is a very important date for us because we'll have a better idea in terms of the software in January. So we are not letting up on the gas at all, quite the contrary.
I wasn't, Kathy, at all suggesting you were laying up the gas. What I'm asking is for some clarity and transparency for the board, because the same Gantt chart we are showing now, I went back to all the board meetings, besides the slight change of where the diamond moved, they're the same relatively superficial Gantt charts we've had before. I would ask us to have very clear, very specific. I wouldn't mind being overwhelmed with detail. We'll tell you when it's too much detail, because I think this is too darn important for the riding public, and we need to see this on, if I may even ask, on a monthly basis so we can get real clarity, because waiting 4 quarters to get to December 31st is not going to work for me.
No, I completely hear you. This is a very important project. It's a very important safety project. We are working diligently to try to do what we can by December of 2018, but the risks are, I don't want to sugarcoat the risks. The risks are significant.
We don't want you to sugarcoat the risks.
And we're certainly, and the other thing I said to the FRA last week was we are focused focused, as Debbie has appropriately pointed out, on those compliance factors, because we sure as hell want to be in compliance. I mean, we have to be in compliance, and we are not losing sight of those factors to ensure that you are in compliance. But we're doing our best to get what we need to get done by December of 2018. The one thing that I would point out, too, is the very first bullet under Metro North, which is by the end of the year, we will have civil speed enforcement across the entire territory, which is a very important milestone with incredibly important safety implications, especially in light of the anniversary of Spite and Dival coming up. So that is a milestone that we are very proud to be able to say that we will have by the end of this year.
Would you have to have an entire line operational for you to operate PTC, or can it be operated in sections pending some of the ongoing concerns that you expressed before?
You can answer that.
We can do it in per line or per sections. Okay?
So it could be operational on sections of
Yeah.
all three of those lines?
Yes. Metro North is broken into 10 segments, and we can implement one segment at a time, which is what our plan is to do. And this way, we don't interrupt operations. But let me say one thing about civil speed enforcement. It is a major accomplishment for Metro North, and it will govern our trains. So we will be, MAS, National Speed Enforcement, will be enforced on our lines. So, and that, right now, we're looking to have that implemented by the first quarter of next year.
Running revenue service demonstration on the pilot is going to demonstrate that the software that we have is working. And it doesn't stop. I mean, right now, I mean, we will need to have FRA approval to proceed past the pilot lines. So without having the supporting data to show that that PTC operations is working as designed, we won't be able to do RSD on non-pilot lines. But once we get revenue service demonstration and our application is approved, that doesn't stop us from rolling out revenue service demonstration on all the other lines, given that we do all of the site performance testing that we're required to perform.
Does FRA actually come and do an on-site inspection prior to approval?
Yes.
Yes. Debbie, given the questions that have been asked, and I know there's a lot more charts, but do you think it's necessary to continue to?
Unless someone has a specific question, I mean, I think I got through the most important slides to explain what FRA compliance is, to show you where we are. I mean, we are trying to be as transparent as we can on where we're at. There is a lot of software. I had one slide here specifically for Neil asking for more information on software. And what I wanted to say is that the system is based on certain elements that have proven performance on other railroads. But despite that fact, there's still a lot of customization of the software packages that we are acquiring to meet the unique operational and functional requirements that Long Island Railroad and Metro North have. So,
Yes, Commissioner. Ira.
Particularly page 92, with the two railroads listed there, I understand civil speed enforcement on Metro North in certain areas by now, September 2017? Is that the case with using positive train control? It says the civil speed, Hudson line to Spite and Dival.
We use the transponders and the onboard readers to enforce the civil speed. So you do not have to have the whole full-blown PTC with the radios in the back office at that point.
But that you have now, is what
Correct.
you're telling me, right? Instead of, as opposed to the an older Cruder system, which we use on the railroad, and I think even Metro North used a lot, and Amtrak certainly used it in many places. You kept signaling with automatic speed control, which is just Cruder by the block, as opposed to this.
We have it on the New Haven line, the New Canaan branch,
Right.
and the lower
That older
Hudson.
system is, just so people understand, we do have civil speed enforcement, and we modified that after that Spite and Dival. I just want, but on the Long Island Railroad, what do we have? What will we have December 2018? I'm a little bit, as Neil was, a little bit confused as to being technically compliant with FRA and what we will have in December 2018.
The two systems, both Long Island and Metro North, are implemented somewhat differently, but what we're implementing is we adopted the advanced civil speed enforcement system that was developed by that was developed previously for Amtrak. And we made a conscious decision to adopt that. That's an overlay onto the existing signaling system.
Right.
So Long Island Railroad actually implemented their civil speed enforcement through that existing signaling system, whereas Metro North implemented it as part of their transponders, the new transponders that are part of PTC.
But will eventually, Long Island Railroad will have civil speed enforcement through PTC. Is that true or not?
It's
Or
a
we don't-
mix and match. I mean, it's, like I
Oh.
said, it's an overlay, so different,
Right. I
different
see.
elements of the system are enforced by either the existing signaling system, which, this is why we already have probably 90% of the safety required for PTC already implemented. The other 10% is being actually implemented as part of this overlay.
So, wait. Because I know before Spite and Dival, there was a discussion about whether we really needed PTC, and it was based on the discussion we're having now, actually, is that the system Long Island Railroad had, in particular, automatic speed control, was almost as good as PTC, especially in certain circumstances. We went ahead with this, we're required to do it. It does offer more safety.
Right.
But I'm asking in December 2018, what will we have? And I'm unclear on what that is, because, as Commissioner Zuckerman said, equipment on board doesn't seem to mean anything to the passenger, but what we're doing now is increased safety. So I'm trying to figure out who's going to be, what is the improvement, actually, is what I guess what I'm asking.
I just
That we're
want
going
to-
to see it December 2018. What won't we have?
I just want to take a crack at this. My recollection in the 2008 statute is that they define PT in certain ways. So it's overspeed protection, it's no incursions into a work zone, it's temporary speed restrictions, and it's something else that I'm forgetting. I'm sorry, what's the other one? Okay, so
Positive
I
stop.
think ideally, we will have a system in place that achieves all of those statutory objectives.
That's correct.
December-
Yes. Yeah.
In December 2018,
But, yeah.
on both railroads everywhere.
Yes.
Okay, then, it's too bad the commissioner isn't here,
That's-
because
that's
essentially,
it.
that's what he was, that the software may not be in place in certain places is a technical background thing, that the safety is what's the important thing, whether we have these protections or not, whether they're based in solid-state technology or something a little bit less from the past, as on the Long Island Railroad, is not, it's important, but not what is the most important thing. The most important thing is to have I think what Catherine mentioned, those 5 aspects that are
The
required.
critical element is the development of the office system that provides the functionality for implementing a temporary speed restriction. I mean, many elements of this PTC system are already in place. But the software is on the critical path. It's the most challenging. Once we demonstrate it on the pilot, that basically validates the PTC design that we have. I mean, it makes it that much easier to test and commission the remaining non-pilot segments. I mean, of course, each one of those lines have unique configurations as far as tracks, switches, interlockings, and that's why you have to do some level of site performance testing. But the software itself, once it's proven on the pilot, and we, of course, have to get FRA approval to, push it on to other non-pilot lines, that, to me, that's probably the golden activity. And we can probably, as quickly as we can, because the timeline is compressed, it'll be a challenge to try to get access on the tracks to test the non-pilot lines. But if we had all resources and time, putting it on the rest of the line would be much faster and easier.
Understood. And the final comment, we don't want to put in something that would cause unusual delays unnecessarily or cause a problem. We have to make sure it's tested and can work. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just in the interest of making sure that we have accurate information, everything will not be ready. We still have some open issues with west of Hudson, no? Or did they get resolved in the last few days?
So we have a slide on the risk for the Port Jervis line. And like I had reported earlier, Metro North did have delays in their planned cutover in September. which delayed the commissioning of their cab signaling system.
So as Debbie said, the way we are implementing PTC is you have a signal system overlaid by PTC. West of Hudson, the current signal system is a automatic block wayside, which is different than the rest of our signal. We're putting in a cab signal system. So to have full functionality, you need the cab signal system and the PTC, and we are going to be late with the cab signal part of it. New Jersey Transit this is their PTC system. They are giving us the equipment to install. We are ready to do that, but when they give it all to us and we put it in, we still won't have full functionality because we don't have the underlying cab signal system. So we are anticipating that west of Hudson, we're going to have an issue to deal with. It is a separate system. It's not the same system as east of Hudson.
West of Hudson, at least on the Port Jervis line, also has the freight railroad system to be considered. The Pascack Valley line is totally in the hands of New Jersey Transit. And I think we need to say that we have an extension on the Waterbury line, so that will not be ready.
You're absolutely correct. So the Port Jervis will have two PTC systems, one for passenger trains, one for freight. The freight one is essentially hosted by Jersey Transit for Norfolk Southern. And you're absolutely correct. We already have an extension till 2020 on the Waterbury branch. Waterbury branch does not have a signal system. So there we're doing the same thing. We're putting in a whole new cab signal system, PTC system, and the FRA gave us a extension on that till 2020.
Yeah, so, I think I followed this, and I just want to make sure everybody's in the same place I am here. We have an existing system that works, I think, very well for the areas it's installed. PTC is a federal requirement and has the potential to ultimately be the gold standard or the unique standard nationwide. And it's not our choice whether to fill out the system with our old system or not. PTC is dictated by federal law. Now, the way you've explained it here, and I think it's very clear, and it was my understanding coming in here, that you have existing system, you have PTC will be layered on top of it and integrated with it where you can, but we have a system that we know works. PTC at the present time is a unknown, but the concept, well established technologically and a function of federal law in any event, is something we're going to have to do, and we're going to do. Now, as I said, to me, the ASC system worked. Had that been in place, we would not be having this discussion regarding the safety aspect of it, but the PTC would still be required by the federal government, so we would be doing that. So we have these two systems that will be operating together or in parallel, and I suppose sometimes intersecting. At some point, do you envision the existing ASC system and civil speed control signals will disappear, and so there will always we will have these two systems working in parallel? All right, cool with me.
If there are no further questions, then we'll get the project review, the IEC project review. Nabil?
Good afternoon. My name is Nabil Ghali, and I will be presenting the IEC's report on the PTC project. With respect to project budget, there is no change in the budget of $968 million since it was reported in June. However, due to delays in design completion and project deliverables, the IAC anticipates that the railroads will review the budget to assess if additional funds are needed for force account resources and third-party services. With respect to project schedule, the railroads are forecasting meeting the PTC statute requirements by December 2018. The PTC Enforcement and Implementation Act of 2015 identified the requirements to achieve compliance. These requirements were explained by Debbie in her presentation. Since our last report to the board in June, the system integrator made insufficient progress to complete a number of key project activities, including design completion, software development, and start of formal pilot testing. This has increased the risk to project schedule and necessitated a modification to the implementation plan. The IEC is of the opinion that achieving compliance by December 2018 will be challenging, as the time allocated to complete the remaining activity for revenue service demonstrations on the pilot lines has been compressed. Further, the current revised plan is dependent on the ability of the system integrator to process and complete software development and testing activities concurrently with finalizing requirements and completion of detailed design. The IEC has the following observations related to critical project activities. The results of the factory acceptance testing performed since June show a need for improvement in certain testing parameters, including requirements traceability, dry run testing, test case coverage, and related documentations. The system integrator has encountered challenges in verifying and validating the field database. To address the challenge, the system integrator hired additional resources. However, due to the large amount of data to be verified, the IEC is of the opinion that additional time is needed to complete this task. Further, the system integrator delayed the start of formal pilot testing from August 2017 to February 2018 in order to mitigate further delays. The project team is currently conducting preliminary testing on the pilot lines. To achieve completion by December 2018, multiple revenue service demonstrations must be initiated within a short period of time. In the IEC's opinion, this may be difficult to achieve due to constraints on resources and track access. Next, I will address project risks. The IEC has identified the following project risks. First, the critical path to achieve compliance includes two main activities: development of office software and integrated system testing. The IEC is concerned that the current schedule has insufficient contingencies to address and resolve issues that may come up during design reviews and testing activities. Another challenge for the project team is to expand the staff with experienced resources. This is critical because progressing multiple system development and testing activities in parallel are stretching existing resources at both the railroad and the system integrator. As I mentioned earlier, the validation and verification of the vital database remains an issue. This has already impacted the delivery of transponders for Long Island Railroad installation and could have an impact on completing the data configuration for the back office server. Another risk is related to the development and implementation of the roadway worker protection system. This system must be demonstrated as part of the revenue service demonstrations for the Long Island Railroad pilot line. A delay in defining the requirements and proposed solution for this system could impact the schedule for the pilot line. This concludes IEC presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? There being none, thank you, Nabil. Let's move forward. Go back to the top of the order again. Committee work plan, Don Spiro.
No changes on the work plan.
Okay. Metro North Capital Program update. First is the progress report on the capital program. John Kennard.
Good afternoon. I'm going to quickly go through the where we are with commitments and completions, and then go through three projects that are major projects that we're tracking through CPOC every 6 months. Thank you. This first slide shows commitments through September. We've committed 51% of our goal, and by the end of the year, we expect to be at 90% or greater of commitments. For completions, we have completed through September 19% of our goal, and by the end of the year, we expect to be at 60% or greater. We'll talk about 3 projects, the first being Superstorm Sandy Restoration Resiliency, Customer Service Initiatives, and Harmon Shop Phase 5. This slide shows the area of damage, Superstorm Sandy from the Bronx to Croton Harmon, about 30 miles on our Hudson line. We are right now in a $302 million design-build project with a joint venture of Judd Law and TC Electric to restore the power and communications and signal infrastructure on the Hudson line. We're in Phase 1A right now, which is from Croton Harmon to Terrytown. Significant work is planned and underway, as you can see from the slide. The status of that work, we are now 85% complete with Phase 1A. The work is currently 21 months delayed. This is a 3-month slip from last time we reported to you in earlier this year. The cause of the 3-month delay was a delay in getting approval from the Army Corps for permitting that was required to do work on a causeway south of Croton Harmon, where we had to install both infrastructure, thank you, both infrastructure as well as platforms that remove some of the equipment out of potential flood area. Phase 1A is scheduled for completion this December. Phase 1B, which is a 6-mile section from Terrytown to Greystone, again, similar work. We expect to start that in January of 2018 with a March 2019 completion. Phase 2, Mott Haven to Greystone, which is a 14-mile segment, larger quantities of raceways, conduit systems, et cetera. What we're doing right now is we're working with the joint venture, completing the design, getting the design development done by March, and we're looking to and beginning to look to do overlap of work that's in Phase 2 with work that's going to be in Phase 1B. You can see some of the markouts in the picture on the photo on the right where we're actually doing utility markouts. Then our forces will be able to get in there and start doing work, and then the joint venture will begin their work as well. Phase 2 completion is forecast for March of 2021. Sorry. The next slide just shows pictures of the installation. The one on the left side is actually interesting because that's the causeway. It's essentially Hudson River riprap, some space to put in these double troughs, and then the right-of-way. The Army Corps permit was required because we're putting in platforms as well to hold some of our central instrument locations and other types of equipment to get it out of potential storm surge. The next phase, the next project, I got to put my glasses on. The next part of this is the mitigation strategies. We identified some of these early on in the project and we'll continue them. We provide the joint venture with long-term outages, sometimes that extend past scheduled dates. We've done this over the last months, and we will continue to do that. We increase flaggers from 12 to 16 to increase production rates. That, frankly, has been more successful lately, and we're hoping that continues. And we're working with the design builder on trying to overlap Phase 1B and Phase 2 work. Looking at smaller trough sizes and interlocking locations, smaller trough takes less real estate. And then we're also looking where areas where we could actually continue use additional existing conduit and trough at discrete locations. The budget is a $302 million budget. We're assessing the impact of the budget, impacts of the budget resulting from the delay. We expect some cost increases to occur. The responsibility for those cost increases between the railroad and the joint venture need to be finalized. And we are assessing liquidated damages, which obviously could impact any of those impacts. The next project is also a Sandy project. It's the replacement of 3 substations on the Hudson line. It's a $44 million project through a joint venture of Verdi and Echo. The award was in December of 2014 with the completion of March of 2018. What we're looking to do is phase bringing the substations online, Croton Harmon in January, Riverdale in February, and Terrytown in March. Final commissioning is upcoming with power cutover, with, as I said, the completion of March of 2018. The project did slip from our last report 6 months ago, and now is in March. We had longer than expected fabrication and component delivery for some of the components for these substations. There were some test failures in some of the relay switches and some transformers, and also there's been delays in getting Con Edison to do some inspection and coordination of these substations. These pictures just show the almost completed substations at Riverdale, Tarrytown, and a small transformer termination at Croton Harmon. The next project is Customer Service Initiatives. The Customer Service Initiative is a program of work, is multi-phase project, includes upgrades to service information systems at Grand Central, at outlying stations, and at certain Metro North facilities. The program complements or is complemented by the MTA-wide advertising concessionaire that was approved last month. The program is being advanced under the 2010 to 14, 2015 and 19 capital programs, as well as funding from the state of Connecticut. Later phases of the project will be funded in the next capital program. Funding for the project shows on this slide at $198 million. Last month, there was discussions about adding additional stations to the program, as well as Wi-Fi capabilities, which was done, approved this morning at committee, and then approved at finance. So that brings the current budget up to $213 million, as opposed to the $198 million that's shown on the slide. I'm going to flip to the next slide. I won't go into the details of that, but this shows the 8 packages that we progressed. A number of them were either advanced under bid or under GEC, and then the 4 that were brought again to the committee this morning and approved both at finance, at the committee and finance as well. So again, this shows it's about a 3-year project, 3-year job to do all these stations and all the infrastructure that goes with it. The next slide talks about the risks and mitigation of the program. There's obviously multiple interfaces between 8 different contractors. We have a construction manager, which is the 8th package. We looked for that programmer to come, that CM firm to come on board and help us manage the integrated schedule. Unforeseen site conditions, particularly down in Grand Central Terminal, where we have to put in a new cable plant. We're looking to do an early validation of conduit routes, as well as perform surveys. And the final is just Metro North project support, and we're looking to have a good integrated schedule so that we can make sure that we have the optimal uses of our forces. Next couple slides I'll go through quickly. In GCT, you can see an old technology, pretty big infrastructure. It's like, our old TVs. Now we're moving to a flat screen technology. We can put it up against columns. So in the bottom slide, you can actually see the route you're trying to go to get into Grand Central and still get the customer information you're looking for. The big boards on the left are the existing ones, an old technology. It's a little fuzzy. We're moving towards an LED technology with really good pixel rate, good clarity, so it'll be visible from throughout the terminal, throughout the concourse. We're also looking to do the same thing with our gate boards, which are at all our platform gates. We'll be able to provide much clearer information to our customers. At outlying stations, we're looking to enhance the service information by adding more screens. The current technology, Dectronic signage on the top left, some of that will stay, but in the right side, you'll see some of that will be replaced by out front screens provided by the concessionaire, and we'll be expanding a lot of CCTV installations, enhancing security and the ability to monitor and do some forensics on incidents as they happen. The final project is phase 5 of the Harmon shop. We're actively doing work in stage 1. In this slide, stage 1 and 1-2. 1-1 is at the bottom. It's 119,000 square foot, 2-track, 10-car consist shop. And stage 1-2 is a 74,000 2-story support shop. Provides a lot of the back shop that will support our shops. Those are underway right now, funded in the current program. Stage 2 which were in design, will be funded in the 15 to 19 program. The Stage 1 work is a $316 million budgeted project. Completion is in April of 2019. Work is ongoing, obviously moving towards completion. The project is within budget. The schedule for completion now is projected to be April 2018. That's a 3-month delay due to some delays in getting some of the industrial equipment that has to go into the support shop. The next couple slides are basically pictures. Essentially, the message here is early on in last May, we were doing initial work. As we get to September, we're really doing a lot of more wrap-up. We're getting close. We sealed buildings. We're putting in equipment. We're putting in lifts. And obviously, we're moving in towards completion next spring. Finally, Stage 2 of this project, Phase 5, is a $442 million budgeted project to do a running repair and support shops for our electric multiple unit equipment. This will be the last phase of the MOV work at Harmon. We expect to award it in July of 2018 with a 4-year project completion. We have shortlisted the projects, the two firms who responded to an RFP in June of 2017, and we're looking to advertise for cost proposal and technical proposals. A draft preliminary risk assessment report is under review by the railroad, and upon review, Metro-North will be developing mitigation strategies to limit our risks. That concludes my comments, and I guess IEC's next.
Sorry, if I can ask the commissioners for permission, if anyone disagrees with me, I'd like everybody to summarize. We no longer have to read these books have been out for quite some period of time, so we'll go to a quasi-consent where the focus should be how much time is left on the project, and are we going to be on schedule, and where do we stand vis-a-vis cost? Are we on budget, under budget, or over budget? The most important things from this point going forward for the rest of the day, given the time. Any issues? There being none, Mohammed, it's all yours.
Actually, it's me, Mark Cosmetti, and it's okay. And I'll start off with the Hudson Line Sandy project. The IEC agrees, well, I'll talk about schedule first. The IEC agrees with the agency's assessment of the delay and the future scheduling of stages. As you heard, the additional 3-month delay since last CPOC was due to a delay in the Army Corps of Engineers permit. On the budget, the IEC agrees with the agency that the budget will need to be increased. The reasons include the schedule delay results in additional monthly soft costs, and the executed and projected change orders to date will likely exceed the current project contingency. The contingency budget will need to be replenished. You can read the risk mitigations. We're working monthly on checking risks. And the observations, we believe that the production rates in future stages can be improved to avoid additional delays. However, it is unlikely that much of the current delay can be recovered. We'll go to the Harmon shop. As the agency stated, the project is currently showing a 3-month delay in completion. The reason is primarily due to delays in the procurement of some shop equipment. The 3-month delay was forecast at the previous CPOC. The project is under budget. At this late stage of the project, there is sufficient money in the budget to cover the executed and projected change orders. And I don't think we need to go over the risk mitigations. You can read those. And the last slide for Stage 2, as the Metro-North mentioned, second stage of Phase 5 is in procurement. Will also be a design-build contract. It is on schedule to be awarded in 2018 after Stage 1 is complete. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Chris?
Good afternoon, Chairman. The IEC conducted risk assessments with M&R and identified the primary risk associated with integrating 7 packages. We recommend that the program should be extended to 36 months based on the risk assessment. In accordance with the budget, M&R now has received bids for the 8 packages, and as before this meeting today, The 198.4 million should have been sufficient for the current scope and effective mitigations. We do note that the project team has identified additional scope for the program, and the budget has increased accordingly. Our recommendation is that the MNR brings on a construction management program as soon as possible to establish an integrated program plan, as well as integrating the 7 packages into a meaningful program. Thank you. That's our report.
Thank you. Up next is the Long Island Railroad Capital Program update. Paul? Summary.
Good afternoon. I'll be presenting an update on the capital program along with the status of the Morris Park locomotive shop, Jamaica capacity improvements, and the mainline double track. So as you can see here, this chart represents the status of the Long Island Railroad's 2017 capital program goals and our progress through September. We've achieved $423 million in commitments and are working towards the achievement of the remainder of our goals. Our starts, completions, and closeouts are also shown on the chart. This slide shows our major starts and major completions, which include project tasks over $10 million. Since our last update to the committee, we achieved additional starts on the mainline double track, the track systems and station contract, as well as the Buckham Road bridge replacement project in Oyster Bay. And an additional project completion was achieved for the Rec Lead Bridge Systems Restoration Project, which was a Sandy project. Morris Park. So as you all know, the existing Morris Park shop was built in 1889, well beyond its useful life. This design-build project includes the construction of a new shop, employee, and material storage facility. In an effort to advance the shop construction, the Long Island Railroad hired a small business mentor program contractor to perform pre-construction work and site preparation, and that contractor is expected to finish in December and has progressed well. As far as the design-build contract, we're just nearly completing the procurement phase. The award has been adjusted 1 month since our last meeting. Procurement cycle's taken slightly longer than we anticipated. Our beneficial use is still maintained in the first quarter of 2020, and the project remains within budget. So as far as risks, the Long Island Railroad, in conjunction with the Office of Construction Oversight and the independent engineer, conducted a risk assessment prior to issuing the RFP. The assessment identified project risks and informed the development of a comprehensive design-build contract. In summary, the June assessment identified an unmitigated or 80% confidence project cost of $100 million compared to the project budget of $108 million, and potential 14-week delay in completion. The most significant risks identified in terms of cost were additional force account support necessary for final utility connections once we finalize the design, and risks of subsurface obstructions due to the historic use of that site. And as far as schedule, those risks were related to delays in the long lead equipment fabrication, as well as the design review and approval process. And of course, we will continue to monitor and update the project risks throughout the life of the project. So as part of the Jamaica Capacity Improvements Phase 1 project, we're in the process of building the 6th platform at Jamaica required to support future service to our western terminals. This is one of our East Side Access Readiness projects, and the project is progressing on schedule and within budget. This aerial photograph shows the location of the new platform south of the existing platforms at Jamaica. We're also installing some high-speed universal crossovers outside of the Jamaica station area to provide greater access to the station during the full reconfiguration of Phase 2. As far as Phase 2 goes, we are in the progress of procuring a design consultant for the Phase 2 reconfiguration, and we plan to complete that procurement in the next month. Phase 2, of course, will entail the streamlining and upgrade of the Jamaica interlockings for increased throughput and express routes and bring our Jamaica infrastructure to a state of good repair. And that work will be performed under multiple future capital programs. So shown on the left here, there's the Johnson Avenue Yard tracks. You can see were shifted south by a prior contract, and the Jamaica Station southernmost tracks, which we call the South Bypass tracks, were shifted slightly to the north to make room for the new platform. And Platform F construction contract was awarded in September of 2016, and progress to date is shown on the right. Contractor's been performing a tremendous amount of pile foundation and supportive excavation work in preparation for the platform structure itself. This is just a little bit more detail, shows some of the supportive excavation systems required for our new stairway from the platform level down to Sutphin Boulevard, as well as some of the platform supports. The photo to the right shows our micro piles being drilled for the platform. The new platform required over 180 micro piles. That operation started middle of the summer and was complete in the mid-September. And there's, out of the 180 piles, there's only 4 piles that remain. That's going to support our new westerly bridge connection to make our entire station connected. I'm sorry? Another 180, 80-foot piles. That's just the diameter, a smaller diameter than what you would call it. 80 feet approximately. And then here's just a photo of some of our other work that's ongoing. Long Island Railroad Forces installed a new crossover down in Dunton Interlocking on the Atlantic Branch. And this will provide some additional operational flexibility for us. And the photo on the right just shows one of the new signal equipment pieces, snow melting case for that interlocking. Work is progressing well, and we anticipate cutting over that crossover in the fourth quarter. And then finally, the mainline double track project. This $387 million project is well underway. As you may recall, the corridor is 17.9 miles long between Ronkonkoma and Farmingdale. And we currently have a single track with passing sidings. Project split in 2 phases. And we're progressing this project on a fast-track schedule. The design-build construction for the Phase 1 civil and site work was completed back in May of 2016. That included all of our retaining walls and earthwork to allow us to build our track and install some of the systems. You can see from the photo on the lower left, Long Island Railroad Forces have completed a majority of the track installation and surfacing. We're doing some third rail work, and we continue installing communication and signal wiring. The upper right photo shows one of those new turnouts that's being installed or was installed in central Islip area. We're projecting a Phase 1 completion at the end of the first quarter of 2018, and we'll cut over that segment following the installation of all that equipment. In this photograph, this slide shows talking about our design build Phase 2 civil and site work. That has as well progressed well on schedule. We should be substantially complete in November. The photo on the left shows the subbase for the new track structure and retaining walls. We've completed a lot of our site work, sidewalk work at the grade crossings and paving to allow for the new track that'll pass by, and you can see some of the finishing touches as well. The retaining walls have had graffiti paint applied and fencing for fall protection and protection from trespass. The contractor for our new signal system continues fabricating equipment for both phases. The first central instrument location in central Islip was received in June. The next 2 interlocking huts are due in October at the end of this month and in November, very end of November, respectively. Long Island Railroad Signal Forces have completed installing a majority of the foundations and is installing the equipment as it's received. Delivery of the Phase 2 equipment is expected to be complete by the end of the first quarter of 2018 as well. Some of these photos just show some preparation work and the actual CIL being installed in Central Islip. As far as the track systems and stations platform contract, that was awarded to LK Comstock. It was a $66.5 million contract. That was awarded in June. Contractors installing the new track, the third rail, signal and communication systems for Phase 2, as well as the design and construction of the Wyandanch and Pine Lawn Station platforms. Of course, the Long Island Railroad will be responsible for the overall system testing and commissioning. Just as far as status goes, the station building design work is well underway. We've completed the foundation designs and that materials and fabrication. Contractor's been installing communications, signal poles, some cabling and hardware. Some grade crossing pads have been installed to support the track work or track installation, which is anticipated to begin in December. I think that's all I have.
Any questions? Yes,
Just
sir.
a brief comment about Jamaica capacity improvements. It was mentioned earlier by Commissioner Albert. PCAC and the Long Island Railroad Commuters Council's continued objection to the way that project's being implemented. I think that it was done, it's interesting how old East Side Access is, but there was a time when they thought everybody wants to go to Manhattan. Things have changed. Downtown Brooklyn is a destination for many people on Long Island, and I think this project with this platform presents a challenge for the Long Island Railroad going forward to provide Brooklyn service to Long Islanders. I think now things have changed back again. I think Brooklyn is a place to go. And I would hope in the Phase 2 that the way the switches are reconfigured, that it allows for an acceptable amount of service to Brooklyn, and that Phase 1 doesn't preclude any of that. And if there needs to be a change, I think we should look to do that. Thank you.
Anything further?
Yeah, let me ask you something about Morris Park. You said the subsurface, historical subsurface contingency. Could you explain that in a little bit more detail?
Sure. Morris Park actually had many more buildings within the complex. There was some old coach shops, some paint shops, blacksmith shops, things that have been taken out of service or were in disrepair over the years. So that site has been cleared over the years. Of course, there's some historic environmental issues that have been really addressed at that site. It is under a DEC site management plan, but we have a clean bill in that regard. We're coordinating all our work with the DEC along the way.
And $250,000 is going to take care of all the cleanup you have left?
Yes, and well, we anticipate we have no issues with contaminated materials, but as you'll note, our risk-assessed budget is $100 million. Our project budget is $108 million, and we haven't reduced that budget to allow for any potential issues that may come up.
So what's the $250,000 for then?
That's a contractual allowance that we have to allow the contractor to deal with conditions such as old foundations. For instance, when we did some work in Johnson Avenue Yard, I know it's the Jamaica project, we found an old building foundations we knew existed. We usually provide an allowance in the contract to ensure that we can adequately handle or remove that material. And similarly, we've done so on the Morris Park shop.
Okay. Can I have the IEC report now? Now it's Mohammed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mohammed Mohammedinia, and I'll be doing the IEC review of the Jamaica Capacity Improvement Project. The project remains on schedule with sufficient contingency. The project is also on budget with sufficient budget contingency. The IEC has observed that the Long Island Railroad project management team has continuous reviews of risk mitigation with all parties involved to manage key risk areas such as coordination between third-party and force account crews, and Long Island Railroad project support. In the opinion of the IEC, the project is managed well, and appropriate steps are taken to mitigate cost and schedule risks. Unless there are any questions, this concludes the IEC review of the Jamaica Capacity Improvement Project, Phase 1, and I'd like to move forward to the mainline double track project. Okay. The IEC concurs with the agency's review of the mainline double track project. The project is on budget. The agency is evaluating the project contingency in order to account for additional work orders requested by various entities. In the opinion of the IEC, based on anticipated contingency expenditures, the project contingency and risk reserves may need to be increased. For schedule review, the project is on schedule. Since the last CPOC presentation, the project's substantial completion date has been accelerated from October 31, 2018 to August 31, 2018. As a result, the new project schedule has no contingency. If the contractors accelerate construction activities and complete the project 1 month early, they will receive the contractual incentives. Observations. The IC has observed that the Long Island Railroad project management team continues to implement innovative ideas to accelerate the schedule. This includes holding over-the-shoulder design meetings between agency and contractor senior designers. Comments and approvals are given at these meetings instead of the standard 30-day turnaround time. This concludes the IEC's review of the mainline double track project.
Thank you. Any questions for the IEC? There being none, let's move on to Dave Kubicek and an update on the M9 car procurement.
Good afternoon, everybody. There we go. That'll work. From a budgetary standpoint, where the project remains within budget, on our part, two takeaways on this presentation here is 40% contractual commercially off the shelf has already been met. Then the other one is that before we went on the summer break, we acknowledged that we were going to exercise options, and we have undertaken that effort for 110 cars. Oops. Takeaway on this slide here is pretty much that the contract was originally awarded in September of 2013. So as y'all all know, these are lengthy efforts. Takeaway from this perspective slide here, 3 areas to note. One, systems qualification testing. Compared to what was done in 2016, we are about 12 months behind on some of the systems on the car. Not in totality, but there were some structural changes, also some electrical changes and such to the car. I can say, though, that those are not inhibiting the status of the overall project. It's just that we do continue to keep these things open until everything has been dotted and crossed off. The middle item, as y'all saw this morning at a committee meeting, Pat showed a presentation or a couple of quick pictures of cars actually being loaded up into barges, and they're hidden over here. They will be stateside in November, and from there we'll start commencing testing. Efforts will be in between Pueblo and Long Island. Long Island will probably start early part of calendar year 2018. And that was noted at the very bottom. Next slide, just to kind of give you an idea of what's coming over from Japan. Basically 2 items to take away from here. LCD screen kind of on the lower right. Then the other one, for those that operate on or go navigate our system, what car am I on? Since we have so many different rail car links, so many different platforms and everything else, this is something that wasn't spec'd out, but kind of a personal thing with the staff. So that way, as our conductors kind of work, navigating the system where you're at, hopefully it'll help speed up. Kind of an interesting tidbit, we probably take about 30 to 40 delays a month just by people not knowing where they're at because it's just so complex. This slide here, probably the biggest takeaway is the picture on the left. This basically is a plug door that basically is electrically operated. Whenever you depress it off of one side, the other side will be able to open up. The FN doors, or where the engineer compartment stuff is at, those will still be the hard manual latch because of the locking and the security with the pressure and everything else. But from a mobility standpoint, this will definitely help the flow for our customers and everybody else involved. Another thing I just wanted to kind of point out was what shipping over from Japan, just kind of give an idea. The engineering compartment stuff's ready to go. These things will be equipped with all the hardware from CCTV, PTC, rolling off, day one, which is really nice to have in place. Also, on these projects, one of the things I've been stressing with staff is that it's a global project. Works multiple continents, works multiple states, multiple countries. So this is, for instance, of what's taking place in Lincoln, Nebraska. This is real steel being dropped. This is actually happening during the summer. So while all the focus was really taking place, say, for instance, in Japan and all the other locations, one of the things that was a big driver is making sure that we do not drop the ball in all of these other steps. That's what gets you in trouble if we're not looking at the complete playing field. The other side of it is just some more superstructure and stuff that's being assembled. The car shell will be welded, put together, and then its next journey down for us will be, the next one will be to Yonkers. Basically, that's where all of the final assembly of, underfloor wiring, boxes, air conditioning racks, that's where the final assembly for the full production cars will take place. Those are not ours, as you can see, but we do make sure that we're checking all the steps to make sure that we've got room for Long Island Railroad. The capacity and stuff is there. They're able to receive our materials and work accordingly. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave? There being none, let's go to the IC report.
Okay, good afternoon. Just very briefly, schedule review. The project's 6 months late, approximately where it was last year. The car builder is starting on his pilot car test program, qualification test program. Assuming things go well, he should be able to keep the March 2019 delivery completion date. Next slide is on budget. The project's within budget. 11.3 million was added to the budget during the last year. Based on the current contingency and assuming no more design changes, the contingency should be adequate. And final slide on observations. Once again, just on the pilot car qualification test program, if that goes well, then that's where the risk is right now. If that goes well, the program should finish up where they're projecting. And finally, as Dave said, the COTS, Long Island Railroad and the car builder have achieved the 40% COTS, commercial off the shelf. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for the IEC? Okay. Next item, Mike Weatherall. Mike, the Morris Park diesel shop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there are two risk assessment briefs in the book. The first one is Long Island Railroad Morris Park Locomotive Shop and Employee Facility. The details here were discussed by Paul Dietland during his presentation. There's also an MTA new fare payment system risk assessment brief on page 120. The project team, Al Poutre, actually discussed that risk assessment and the details at the Finance Committee. So we'll just open it up to questions.
Any questions for Mike? There being none, Ronnie?
Okay. Why don't I just state that the commitments and completion performance highlights through September 30, 2017 on the commitments, they appear on page 124 of the book with details immediately thereafter. And on the completions, again through September 17, they appear on page 128 with details thereafter.
Are there any questions? There being none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Seconded? See you Wednesday morning, everyone. Thank you.